Hey guys, just a quick tip today. We're going to be fixing halos in Photoshop using the clone stamp tool. So a lot of times when you're doing exposure blending and you're blending a darker sky with a brighter foreground, you end up with bright halos, either from not doing an amazing job with your masking, or sometimes it just happens when you've over sharpened the image and you get those halos where a dark horizon meets the bright sky. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm playing around with this image here, and this is taken in Iceland during one of my workshops. And what I've got going here is we started from here, and let me show you what each one of these layers are doing here. So this first one here, I've just cooled down the color temperature of the water. I kind of like that look. It makes the water feel very cold, very crisp. I've done a little bit of dodging and burning on this particular layer here. If I turn it off and on, just trying to make some of those kind of dead brown grasses pop a little bit. And then I've got another layer here where I've darkened down the entire exposure. And then on the next one, I've brightened up the center of the exposure just to kind of direct the eye towards the center just a little bit. And now at this stage, I was feeling like our sky was just kind of, there's not much going on. It was just a foggy, overcast day, but there was a little bit of texture in there. So I created a merge visible layer. I went into Adobe Camera Raw and I added just a whole bunch of contrast and some clarity. And we were able to get this much texture out of the sky. At this point, I felt like it was a little bit too bright, so I created a levels adjustment, and then I attached that levels adjustment to that sky layer, and I darkened it down a little bit, and we've come away with this much detail, which is a pretty big improvement over that, I think. But the problem is we have, if we zoom in here, we've got all of this haloing that happened partially because my masking job wasn't perfect, but because we've added so much contrast, it's some of these darker areas just create halos against our sky. So I'm going to show you guys how to quickly fix that. It's really simple, actually. What we're going to do is create a merge visible layer, which basically is just a current version of our photo on its own layer. So we've got pixels to play with. And you do that by going Control-Shift-Alt-E or Command-Option-Shift-E on Mac. And it gives us this layer here, which is just the current state of our photo only on its own layer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into this area here. We're going to select our clone stamp tool. And we're going to go up to the blending mode of our clone stamp, which is right up here. And we're going to change the blend mode to darken. And the reason we want to do that is because we're going to be selecting or sampling some of our sky. And then we're going to basically clone stamp that over the halo area. And because our land is darker than the sky and we've changed the blend mode to darken, it's not going to affect the mountain at all. It's only going to affect the parts of the sky that are brighter than what we sampled. Let me show you how it works. So I'm going to decrease my size a little bit. I'm going to lower the opacity to somewhere in the 70s. And then I'm going to sample by holding Alt. I'm going to sample a section of the sky right next to where we're going to fix our halo here. So hold down Alt, click there, and then I'm just going to go over that halo. And if I turn this layer off and on, you can see what we just did. It does a really good job of just correcting that halo. And because we're working in a lower opacity, we can go over it a couple times. And that lower opacity is going to help us not have a very definite, dark halo in our sky, which can sometimes happen. So we're just going to zoom around our photo here, find our problem areas, sample a portion of sky right next to where we're working, and then just go over the top of it, of our halos here. It's amazing how well this can work. And, halos are just one of those artifacts that happen when we're doing sharpening and when we're doing exposure blending. And this is just a quick, easy way of correcting that. We'll go over our entire horizon area here. I'm selecting really close to where that halo is. So I'm sampling right here, going over that. Sampling right here, going over that. And I'm just going to do that for all of my areas where I feel like we're getting a little bit of halo. And sometimes the halo is just the natural way that the sky looked, but it can look like an artifact more than it actually is. Let's zoom into this area here, hit this one more time, zoom back out. And now let me turn this off and on. You can see how we've corrected this halo here just with that simple little clone stamp trick. Let's throw in a couple more tips. Let's go ahead and do a couple more things with this photo. Since we're here, one of the things I want to do is add a bunch of texture to this water. Like there's already a fair bit of texture, but I feel like we could really amplify it a bit. And one of my favorite tools for doing that is actually just a free plugin. It's called Nik Color Efex Pro. If you don't have it, go over. You can download it for free. Google owns it now. But inside Nik Color Efex Pro, there's something called Detail Extractor. And it's almost like a faux HDR kind of look, which can really ruin your photo. But in certain areas of your photo, it looks kind of good, I think. So all I'm going to do is add a little bit of this into our water area. And it's okay to go ahead and overdo this because we can always lower the opacity of this on our layer. So I'm just going to add a whole bunch of Detail Extractor and maybe boost the shadows a little bit and then hit OK. Way overdone, and the rest of the image just looks absolutely awful, but we're going to just use a layer mask and paint it into the areas that it actually looks okay. And we can use as much or as little of this adjustment as we want. That's the beauty of working inside Photoshop, is nothing is permanent. You can always just lower the opacity. So yeah, when it pops open, we pretty much ruined our image, but we're just going to add this into little areas to kind of accentuate the texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer mask. I'm going to invert it by going Control-I, and now we're starting from scratch. And we're going to kind of let our eyes adjust because we just assaulted it with way too much texture. So now I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to grab a white paintbrush. I'm working pretty quickly, so you guys don't have to wait on me here. But I'm painting on my layer mask, and anywhere that I paint white, it's going to reveal this particular layer. And I'm just going to paint it into the areas of the water that I wanted that effect, especially in these areas here where I know that there's texture, but it just wasn't showing up very well. So I'm just going to subtly paint this in. If there's areas that I feel like I've added too much of that effect, I can go back with a black paintbrush, switch over to black by hitting X, and then just with a larger paintbrush than that, go over that area there. That way it's not grabbing the eye too much, because some of these areas, it's adding just a little bit too much contrast to, I think. Like that, like that. We're just going to subtly work it in, something like this. Now, if I turn this off and on, you can see we've really drawn the eye with all of that extra texture we've just added. If I turn this off and on, we brought out tons and tons of texture. And if I feel like this is way overdone, which it kind of is, I'm just going to go to this layer and decrease the opacity. And as I decrease the opacity, I can blend that in to taste. So now it's something more like this, which is a little bit more palatable. And then I would go through, finish this shot, and that's what I wanted to show you guys today. So hopefully you found some nugget in here that you didn't already know. Thank you guys so much. Sorry it's been a while since my last video. If you have ideas for future tutorials or anything you'd like to see on the YouTube channel, leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.